All right, guys, welcome to the channel. This is a improv last second. We're going to do a live interview with Alaskan Ballistics. He just hit me back and said, yeah, we can do it real quick. So we've got Alaskan Ballistics here. And Chuck, if you want, go ahead and introduce yourself and let everybody know who you are.
Hi everyone, I'm Chuck. Got the Alaskan Ballistics channel, and I'm just a fat dude who likes shooting over a chronograph. So that's what I do in my videos. So
There you go. So what got you involved in the firearms industry? Like, how did you initially get started?
I
At
started
what
working
age?
in gun shops, and then like I just did. I after like a couple of teaching jobs, I didn't like teaching anymore. So I worked at a car dealership, and they had us put videos on YouTube of the cars and send them to customers.
Mhm.
And I hated doing that, but I liked the YouTube aspect of it. So I ended up um, uh, ended up like just buying a chronograph one day and taking my camera to the range and going, there's not a lot of people out there chronographing everything, every round they can out of every gun they have.
Mhm.
There's people that do it occasionally, and so that was the idea of my channel, was kind of the ballistics by the inch. So I've never worked in the firearms industry that other than a couple of gun shops here and there, like just being a salesman and Cabela's. But like I've never really been big in the industry other than that. But it's just I like the numbers on things, so I was a numbers nerd. So
Dude,
that's what.
I like how your channel goes over the feet per second and your standard deviation and how you break it down. That was one of the big things for me because I am a hand loader a lot like yourself,
Mhm.
and somebody breaking down how they're getting their feet per second and things of that nature. It I understand all the math that goes behind it. Not everybody does, but the way you explain it,
Mhm.
it's very simple and very straightforward. And
Yeah,
that's what we need in this industry.
yeah. Oddly enough, I have the formula for foot pounds of energy memorized in my head since I worked in that first gun shop at age 19.
Mhm.
So that's the only thing I've remembered from 20 years. Um, but yeah, it's for those of you who want to calculate your own foot pounds of energy, it's feet per second squared times the bullet weight and grains, all divided by the constant, which is 450,240. So
So you've got it memorized.
no, yeah, nothing to it. I'm sure they'll need to say that again, but
So what was the firearm that you shot the very first time?
very first firearm I ever shot was a Franchi 22. It was a tube fed in the stock, like the Browning.
Hmm. Hmm.
Oh, excuse me. And yeah, it was a jam-o-matic thing too, man. It didn't matter what kind of ammo we put in there. That thing did not like anything. 4 or 5 shots jam, 4 or 5 shots jam. Just the
Was
way
it
it was.
one of those that would do 22 short and 22 long, or was it just specifically
No,
22 long?
it's 22 long rifle because it's semi-auto.
Gotcha.
Hmm.
What was the first firearm that you ever bought?
Marlin Model 60 tube fed.
And
Still have that one. That's the one gun I've kept since I've kept two guns since my first two guns. My first two guns I've kept, which the other was a Remington 870 12 gauge. And yeah, I love the Marlin Model 60. I honestly, I'm now that Ruger's bought Marlin, I'm hoping we can get a micro grooved barrel 1022.
that would be sick. I'm hoping that they bring out the lever action 4570s again now that they bought them.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh,
hoping.
they've already brought those out. They've already released those. They
Have they
just
released the new ones?
Yeah, they just haven't put a lot out in the market, but they've already released those. People have bought them and shot them.
Okay.
Those are
Well, I'm hoping the market gets a little saturated with them. Let me rephrase it.
Yeah, because they went up about $300. Yeah,
Yeah.
which is unnecessary. So
So, with you being in Alaska, how much different is the firearm culture there versus? So, I'm in Kentucky. Firearm culture here is it's wavy. It's you got people like me that are really into it. Then you got people that are just like, yeah, whatever. I don't care.
hmm
How is
uh,
it there?
so I live in suburban Alaska, if you will, around Anchorage. Anchorage is a very purple town. Like Alaska, it wouldn't surprise me if when I got here, Alaska, they didn't have a Democratic senator or a Democratic governor, but they had independents that were pretty much Democrats.
Hmm.
Uh, uh, in fact, that's how Lisa Murkowski ran her last race and then registered as a Republican. But anyway, uh, yeah, we're trying to get her out. Don't worry. But yeah, like so, it's a very purple town, so you can't really go around town going, I'm a pro gun guy, and people not look at you strange, because there's a lot of people from Oregon and California living in Anchorage. That being said, if you're hiking on the trail, you'll see at least 5 or 6 other people open carrying a handgun, and maybe 1 or 2 other people carrying a long gun. Um,
Gotcha.
because there's that. The hunting is really big. Um, like the cops are pretty good about it. If you have a gun on, say, "Hey, I got a gun on me," when they pull you over, you're like, "Okay, cool, whatever," And so the cops are pretty good about it. And that's happened to me once. So yeah, they're like it's uh the hunting culture is huge. The gun culture is pretty good. I mean, we do have the most gun owners officially in the statistics per capita, which is like almost 70% here, which is like more than any other state by a long shot. So,
So is that based upon as much dangerous game as there is, or is it more along the lines of you are your own protection type scenario?
yes, the hiking, the ones you see hiking, that's from the dangerous game. Obviously, you're more likely to be charged by a moose than a bear, but obviously bears are the ones people are afraid of. And and to be honest with you, I've had about as many run-ins with moose as bear. So yeah, hiking on the trail, having a gun on you, that's basically what it is hiking on the trail. Um, the dangerous game. But as far as like, yeah, there's the you are your own protection culture as well here. Because there's a lot of places like, you know, there's no way there's no way a cop, state trooper, or anything would come to where I live if we had a problem. There's no
Hmm.
way they'd be there within 20 minutes. Like
Gotcha.
where I live is, you know, interesting to say the least. It's a weird location. I drive 30 minutes to Anchorage for work. I mean, we live in suburban, but suburban Alaska, I still have a 7,000-foot mountain outside my house, and I'm I'm in the wilderness walking across the street. So it's definitely interesting. So
So that's that's cool. This is one of the biggest things that I've enjoyed about doing these interviews with all sorts of people, and I've been able to do it with people from Canada all the way to California and back to Kentucky and Georgia. And it's great, like hearing people talk about how different their culture is there compared to here. Because, like, the cultures here is it's very normal to see people open carrying where I live in Kentucky, even though it's suburbia, like how you are to Anchorage. I'm suburbia that way to where Corvette is manufactured.
hmm
So, but it's all open highway. So even though I'm in town, like the local sheriff's department is less than 3 minutes down the road from my house. So it's kind of one of those things, but it is what it is. So with you living in Alaska, um, how hard is it for you to get certain elements of firearms components, like i.e. primers, powder, projectiles,
okay.
stuff like that?
Projectiles are usually easy. Brass is easy. If it's available online, I can order it shipped to my house.
Hmm.
Um, Firearms themselves are pretty easy. Again, if they're available online, I can order it and ship to my FFL. Um, Primers and powder and loaded ammunition or primed cases um, are pretty difficult because all the ammo that is in Alaska, all the gunpowder that is in Alaska, all the primers that are in Alaska are imported and exported out of Washington State. And they literally have to go across international waters to get here. and so they have to go through an importer exporter. That is basically a federal law, international law. Now, ammunition itself. When I travel out of state, I can bring a box 11 pounds with me in a case, in a locked box in my suitcase.
Mhm.
So I can bring 11 pounds of ammo. And when I went to IV-88 a couple of years ago, that's what we did. On the way back, my wife had a can in her pack. I had a can in mine. My cameraman had a can in his bag, and we all came back with some ammo. The hard thing is I needed a reloader 22 powder. It was sitting on the shelf there in Moss Pawn Shop in Georgia, and the IV-88 guys pawn shop, which I used to live in that exact area of Georgia. That's where I'm from originally, and so I've been there many times. And I couldn't. I couldn't. I could. There were 2 pounds of powder that I needed. I couldn't bring it back with me because they wouldn't let me bring it back on the airplane. And I could, a pallet to put it on a pallet at an importer exporter, you got to buy the pallet. So they're not going to put it on somebody else's pallet. So you got to buy the pallet, and then I think it's about 100 pounds. It's $100 per 100 pounds of powder on the pallet. So, and then you got a flat fee for some pallets. So it just depends on where it is. But to ship, you know, I know people who have done it back when ammo was cheaper, obviously, and they would all order a bunch of ammo, and they'd all go a couple $1,000s in for ammo, and all go a couple $1,000s in for the shipping. And they'd save a lot of money versus buying it on the shelf here. That being said, once Cabela's and Bass Pro got up here in Sportsman's Warehouse, it's usually the same price as it is in. It's usually the same price as it is in a Bass Pro or Cabela's in the South, like in the lower
Gotcha.
48. So not always. There's some things that had to be, that are not the same price, but ammunition they generally eat that, which surprises me because I've been on the other side of the counter and I see what ammunition costs the retailer and what they sell it for, and it's only like a few bucks profit. So I don't know how they do it with the added shipping cost. So
Well, it's got to come into the aspect of it. Companies like Cabela's and Bass Pro and things like that, they're buying so much at
yeah,
one time, and they're a big proponent in herders,
mhm,
um, where they have a huge influx from herders, Ammunition Co., where
yeah,
they're just buying so much at one time, and now that's their quote unquote store brand.
yeah.
So it helps, but um,
And it's too bad herders went down in quality since Winchester started making them. They were
I
made, um, what is it, SMB?
mhm.
SMB was making them. So I'm not a big fan of Winchester quality right now. So
I'm not either. I remember when Herders was doing the 300 blackout and Sealer and Beloit was still having the contract for the centerfire, and it was such good ammo then. And now the centerfire rifle stuff, even 300 blackout, as cheap as it is for me to load it, I still need brass. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And it's just absolute trash.
yep.
I hate it. So what's your daily pack for living in Alaska? Like obviously there's big game, so you have to take in that factor. I understand that.
Yeah.
But um
Like a daily EDC.
yeah. Like what does that look like for
Well,
yourself?
I'm a school teacher, so most of the time I don't have one in my car. My
Hmm.
wife and I commute to work, and she'll have one with her, and I'll drop her off, and she'll have the gun with her, and then I'll go to my work where I don't have any on the school property. As much as I would like that to change, I'm gonna follow the rules because I'd like to keep my health insurance and feed my family. Um,
Hmm.
as much as I'd like, I think there should be an armed teacher in every school, but that's another subject for another time. There's another question. That being said, summertime or weekends, or after school, I live fairly out of the city, wilderness. Bears have walked across my yard. I've not seen them. My neighbor has. Moose in the yard. Lynx was in the yard the other day. And so, like, if I'm walking across the street up the hill, you know, by my house, then you know, I usually have at least a 10 millimeter on me.
Gotcha.
Yeah. My bare minimum will be a Glock 29. With the last year, I didn't see hardly any bear tracks or signs in the neighborhood. I saw one bear on the road into the neighborhood. One very small black bear. I could have wrestled it. Um, but like this year, I've saw like I walked up the power line. The snow was melted in our neighborhood, but 400 feet up on the power line, it was still needed snowshoes in places,
Mhm.
and there were just grizzly tracks this big everywhere. Um, 2 or 3 inches wider than my foot, 2 or 3 inches longer than my 12-inch clumsy shoe for my short self, and size 12, and like so it this year I've been carrying my 44 mag a lot going around the neighborhood, just walking around. Nobody cares in my neighborhood, obviously.
Yeah.
My wife has been carrying. I mean, she's 9 months pregnant. Like like I told you, she can pop at any moment. Like she's over her due date, and like she carries the Glock Model 40, a 10
Mhm.
millimeter on her hip. She's got it wrapped around her hip in a chest holster that she actually just wraps around her hip a couple times and snaps it together and it stays. Um, and that's how
If
she
it
does.
fits, it ships.
Yeah, that's how she does it with yoga pants on. Whatever. Um, Pregnant women's yoga pants. I'm not going to judge her. I'd rather her carry it like that than not carry it at all.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah. So, yeah, that she carries that, and I think I have 220 grain hard cast Underwood in it, and that's with the 6.5 inch KKM barrel you've seen on my channel, and
Mhm.
so yeah, so our everyday carry works like that. As now you said, like a pack. Generally speaking, I have matches, lighters, emergency blankets, a couple of bars of food in each vehicle. Um,
Mhm.
we do live 35 minutes away. If it's November and negative 19 degrees, makes it pretty cold. I often bring my snowshoes back and forth between school and work every day. Um, for the simple reason that if we get stuck, like you cannot sit there in a car that's negative 19 degrees if it's not warm. If the car's been warmed up, you obviously don't open the door until it's until it gets warmer. But like you put on all the clothes you have and you put on your snowshoes and you walk and you'll be warm. You'll be too warm possibly. Um, but because it's actually very easy to overheat doing exercises like that when you're wearing all that clothes. People don't realize that it's 20 degrees out or something like that and they overheat. So that's that.
Yeah.
So I'll keep those in my car. Keep like anything to make a fire with. I'll keep the little rim oil uh, rags in my car. I keep
Mhm.
those in my car, and honestly, those are more for starting a fire too, because that's one of your best wilderness fire starters right there. So, yeah,
That was kind of going to be my question: is why you keep those of all things that you keep? Why those? But you
yeah,
answered it. So,
yeah. I mean,
um,
because you can wipe your gun down and then make your fire. There's still enough oil after you wipe 5 guns down to start a good fire.
oh yeah,
So, and it actually starts if you have one of the flint strike things. This actually starts better than a lot of that fire stuff. So,
really, gotcha. So you were talking about springtime there, and springtime where I'm at is like 65, 70 degrees. What's the temperature like there in the spring? Are we still talking negatives, or are we still talking?
um, well, it depends on how you define springtime. I mean, Alaska does have 4 seasons. It has winter, June, July, and August. Um, um, Now I kid. It depends on where you're at in Alaska, obviously. We had snow melted out by the mid to late April this year, completely melted in most places. It was completely melted in my neighborhood, and then we went to film a bunch of videos, and we still needed snowshoes. People were commenting, "It's still snowing there," and I'm like, "No." Um, but it had 10 feet of snow. It just doesn't melt. Temperature wise, once the breakup season starts, as we call it, breakup, which not good if you're posting this breakup season on Facebook that people think you got divorced or whatever. But once the breakup season starts, meltout season, whatever you want to call it, it's typically 25 at night in March, late March, maybe even 15, and then gets up to 32, 33, 34. And it'll start just easing out and melting. And at this point, you can pretty much get the ice off your driveway and sidewalks with if you got an ice pick and a shovel and some salt on it and melt
Hmm.
it. And that way you can have like a safe place to walk. And then you'll usually get another big snowstorm after that. Um, and then usually one, and then it'll start melting out pretty good in beginning of April. I've seen it melt out as mid-February, and we had a great March that you could hunt all small game until March 31st, and it was dry and they were out and going about. And then I've seen it not melt until all the way clear until May 1st, you know.
Hmm.
Um, so it really varies from year to year how much snow you have, where you live. Um, it was pretty interesting there for a while. I mean, and just the way the sun shines on you, like because of the mountain in front of me, my house is like completely melted. All grass in my yard and the yard next to me is more covered by the shadow of the mountain. Just I mean, it's literally 40 feet that way, and
Hmm.
their yard's covered in snow, 2, 3, 4, 5 inches deep. You know, so it really does make a huge difference where you're at. Where I go film videos at got a lot more snow, but it gets a lot more sun. And so there's that. And then, Anchorage compared to where I live near Palmer. Um, and I don't live in Palmer because people that live in Palmer live in the flat valley, and I live outside of town, and I got a 7,000-foot mountain right next to my
Yeah.
house. Um, so
So apparently, I don't know if you know who DOD After Dark is.
mm,
Um, Dark said that I had margaritas and mid-shelf tequila for everybody when they showed up,
yeah,
but
a little disappointing.
I didn't get that memo.
Mm.
Um, but it wouldn't shock me if Dark did say it. So that time of year when you're talking about then, I'm from Wisconsin, and so we call that body rising season, and it's just when all the snow melts. And literally like graves and stuff will literally float. Like there's been caskets that have floated out of the ground and stuff like that up there. It's pretty crazy watching it happen. But um so you were talking about earlier how you don't recommend hardcast or self-casted reloads and stuff like that for defensive carry. Why? If you don't mind me asking.
I don't recommend them in the Glock stock barrel.
Okay.
That was in my chat earlier.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Glock stock barrels are they're notorious for soft lead bullets, letting them up really, 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 really um right where the round meets the chamber, right where the lands start.
Hmm.
And so with soft lead, I'm talking soft lead, I'm not talking hard cast.
Hmm.
With soft lead, you shoot for 20, 40 rounds through it, and now the barrel supremely leaded up, and when that new bullet goes into the chamber, it's going to create more pressure because it's right there at the thing. And so with hard cast, it just doesn't happen as fast, but it does happen.
Yeah.
So I recommend any gun that has non-traditional rifling. If it
Hmm.
has traditional lands and grooves, that's great. If it has the kind of the octagonal polygonal rifling, I explain it to people at Cabela's this way. I know you know this, but traditional lands and grooves are like a mesa, straight on
Hmm.
top, flat on top, and they twist down the barrel, right? Whereas
Hmm.
polygonal rifling is like a rolling hill, and it's easier to fill up that rolling hill with dirt than it is to fill up the space between two mesas with dirt.
Yeah.
All right, so that's the way I kind of explain it to a lot of people, and so when you get that, and then if you look at a Glock barrel, you'll see the back of the case isn't supported quite as much. So once you combine those two factors of you can let up your barrel and you have not as much chamber case support, I wouldn't recommend shooting any heavy load, but especially hard cast through a Glock stock barrel. Now, have I done it? Yes. Have I done it on the channel? Yes, several times. Um, do I recommend like with The coated hard cast makes it a lot better. So
Hmm.
the Underwood red lipstick rounds will make a lot better, or the CKB hard cast bullets. Great.
I like CKB bullets a lot.
Yeah, CKB bullets are awesome. If you haven't visited his site, he texts me on MeWe and stuff. He's a good guy too. He texted me that, oh, my price is going to rise in June. So I looked at his prices in June. They went up $4, $5, $6. I'm like, they still beat everybody else's prices. So it's like, why? Why
Yeah.
not?
I mean,
Um,
the amount of projectiles you can get as high quality as what it is
hmm
for as little as it is. I literally use the CKB rounds as just practice.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
because it's so cheap for me to load, and I can load so many rounds so fast on my progressive presses
hmm
that it's like I can just churn and burn and go burn 500 rounds at practice and not have to care that
yeah.
it's going to cost me an arm, foot, and half a leg.
Yeah,
So,
CKB rounds are awesome, but I love his coated rounds, and I think they're okay out of a stock Glock barrel for a while. But you still don't want to like run a whole bunch at max charges through a stock
yeah.
Glock barrel, and that's in any caliber, but especially in a very high pressure caliber like 40 Smith and Wesson or 10 millimeter or 357 Sig, or even 9 millimeter plus P rated. So I would just say, yeah, probably not the best. Um, the worst, the 45 though is actually the worst for chamber support. Like I would not,
Hmm.
I would like it's even worse. The 45 is even worse than the 10 millimeter on chamber support. So don't run 45 plus B plus or 45 super, through a stock Glock barrel for sure. 450 SMC that'll get you blown up in my opinion.
Oh yeah. So
So
all my rounds that I load very anemic speeds, especially my pistols. And it's from doing IDPA and IPSC that I'm looking for as little recoil as I can have. Although 9 millimeter already doesn't recoil a lot, but I'm looking for very anemic speeds. So I'm way under where people need to be. I'm on the verge of squib side, but I've been loading for so long. I know what the right charge feels like in my pistols.
mhm.
So,
Yeah, and that's a good point. Is like everybody loads for something different, and like me, I'm trying to load as max as I can safely, so that I have enough penetrating power with a hard cast bullet.
mhm.
Make it through a grizzly bear skull, or worse, if I don't get a headshot because of the angle or the he's on top of me or whatever, and I have to take shoulder shots like that, I can break shoulders.
Yeah,
Um, and there's a lot of old timers that say you're better off breaking shoulders because they'll they'll turn and run, versus trying to get the perfect headshot. Um, and I'm not saying they're right. I think getting the perfect headshot's better, but um,
it's
you know,
scary no matter how you look at it. You have a
yeah,
5, 6, 700 pound animal running full charge at you.
yeah, and that's a
It's,
small one.
yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, and you think about it. Oh, why would you use a 10 millimeter or a 9 millimeter? Why wouldn't you get a 44 mag or a 454 Casull or something like that? And the truth is, you'd rather have a long gun anyway. But you will never. You've probably heard me say this on the channel a bunch, but you will never match the energy of a charging bear. It's a losing
I
game.
agree.
You have to win the anatomy game, not the physics game. You will lose the physics game every time.
Hmm.
Um, and because an 800-pound bear charging at 25 miles an hour, so a medium slow bear, like my football coach called me. Um,
Hmm.
all right, like he generates over 16,000 foot-pounds of energy
Hmm.
because it's just even though he's going slow, his mass is literally trillions of times what a bullet's mass is.
Oh yeah,
There's
absolutely.
7,000 grains in a pound, and that bear weighs 900 pounds. Okay, maybe not trillions, but hundreds of thousands of times the mass of the bullet, and he generates 16,000 foot-pounds of energy. Well, your 50 BMG sniper rifle, your BMG, your Barrett, it generates 12,000 pounds of energy. So you're never going to catch up with it until you get to a 20 millimeter that you can't carry, which are all destructive devices that require a class 3, like a silencer or a machine gun does, So
Mhm.
like you're never going to catch up with it. So Like I'm a big proponent of carry what you can accurately shoot the best with enough penetrating power. And for some people, that's a 9 millimeter. For some people, that's a 38 special. I mean, God help them, but it's better than a sharp stick. So,
So, Alex, you'll have to go subscribe over to Alaskan Ballistics. Everybody in here, if you're not subscribed to Alaskan Ballistics, get over there, subscribe to him. He's linked in the description. He's linked to his Instagram in the description also. He does some crazy stuff. So you see guys that are hunting with like 6.5 Creedmoor and using that for bear. What do you? I know it puts out decent terminal velocities and terminal energy at 400 yards and in. I literally use mine to punch steel. So for me, it has no hunting element to it for me.
mhm.
What do you think 6.5 Creedmoor is a applicable cartridge for hunting bear?
It depends. If you're hunting black bear black bear are much bigger than, well, they are, but they're you don't need something much bigger than you need for the average whitetail round. Um, if you have a round in your deer rifle in Kentucky and a black bear comes running up your tree stand, you're gonna shoot it with a round that will pretty much do. So I like this bacon guy.
He
Yeah,
comes from DLD After Dark. He's a good dude.
yeah. Um, so I dang, that got me off track. But anyway, like the bullet, the bullet selection is more important than the caliber, as
Hmm.
you and I would probably agree on that.
Hmm.
Um, like if you put a 120 grain TTSX, it doesn't matter if you shoot it out of a 7 mag, a 7 millimeter '08, or a 6.5 Creedmoor, which is, I mean, it's not the same bullet, but or a 6.5 PRC. That 120 grain Barnes TTSX is going to penetrate all the way through. The faster caliber you shoot it out of, the more likely it is to peel its petals off, but the core of that bullet's going to still penetrate all the way through, and it's going to do exactly what it's supposed to do. And so, like, I would say with the right bullet, if you were hunting bear over a bait stand, 6.5 Creedmoor is enough. And I know somebody who claims they killed a 6.5 brown bear with a 6.5 Creedmoor over a bait stand. I met somebody. I don't know them. I met somebody, and they were sitting there making fun of it, calling it a need more and all that stuff. And
I mean, it's definitely a 6.5 need more.
yeah, and and that being said, I hunted. I didn't see anything, but I hunted a brown bear and black bear almost the entire spring with my 6.5 284 Norma. So I love that rifle. I haven't killed anything with that rifle yet, and that rifle is going to be hunted with until it kills something. And
Hmm.
then I'll probably step back up to my magnums. Um,
So
but
if you were going out bear hunting, I don't know how your season runs. I don't know if like one bear season is considered for all breeds of bear, or is it broken down like brown bear is this season, black bear is this
oh
season,
man,
grizzly bear is this season?
it's broken down by species. It's broken down by the unit you're hunting. When you read it all, you got to have a college degree in the hunting regulations alone, plus a master's just to understand it all. So it's crazy. You're probably doing something illegal every time you go out, and you just got to go out on the hunting regulations are that thick. But no, I kid a little bit. I'm exaggerating just a hair. But yeah, there's different seasons for different units. And literally, I live at the border of two different units. If I walk across the street that way versus this way, I'm in a different unit. Like I live, and these units are as big as the state of West Virginia. So like
Hmm.
that's how big they are, because people don't realize how huge Alaska is. If you put the top of Alaska where Barrow is at the top of Minnesota and the Canadian border there, if you superimpose it on a map, the Panhandle is in Georgia, down where Juneau is, and Saskatchewan and all that stuff.
Hmm.
The end of the Aleutians is in California, past the California coast, actually, and the bottom of the Kenai Peninsula is in Texas. That's how big Alaska is, fit over the United States. And
Hmm.
so these units are like literally we drove around Unit 13, and we drove over 8 or 9 hours before we got to another unit. Um,
Oh
uh,
wow.
the other day, and that's because we drove around it. If we had just driven straight, we would have been different. But like, and they're different sizes. Obviously, Anchorage has its own hunting unit area, and then so it's a lot smaller because it's heavily populated. And then some of these places you can't reach other than float plane. So there's not that. So
Ryan from Boom Country Hydrographics, I did an interview with him last night, and he said 6.5 by 284 Ackley, count him in. Um,
yeah,
so he's big into the Ackley cartridges. He loves them.
yeah, I need to get into them. 280 Ackley Improved is probably one of the best cartridges made right now.
He's big into that, and I want to say he's working on a 223 Ackley Improved. Don't hold me to that. It's either him or somebody he's um, squatted up with on his rifle team. One of them. I'm not exactly sure if it's him or if it's somebody else, but we were talking about that last night.
I
Um,
almost ordered my 22 250 barrel in 22 250 Ackley Improved. The only reason why I didn't was just you can find 22 250 ammo everywhere. You have to hand load the Ackley Improved.
so for the guys that are listening that don't necessarily know what Ackley Improved is, can you break it down a little bit?
I'm not the best guy to ask for that. I know that there's a guy named Ackley, and he made a bunch of improvements to a bunch of calibers. There's a 30-06 Ackley Improved, a 280 Ackley Improved, stuff like that. So Ryan would probably be better than me. So I forgot his name. Was it Dave Ackley? I don't remember. But yeah. So he made a bunch of improvements. Changed the shape of the shoulder case or whatever, allowed it to get a little more pressure and a little bit more powder in it, and like a 280 Ackley Improved is almost the same exact size as a 280 Remington, but gets almost the same ballistics as a 7mm Rim Mag.
I want to
So
say it's a 30-degree shoulder bump now.
yeah, I think so. So
Don't hold me to that. I'm like you. I know how to load them and cut chambers for them, but
yeah,
I don't know the whole details about it. So that question was kind of like my own question, even though I was gonna blame it on everything.
yeah,
Ryan said he went 22 Creedmoor over 22 250. Is that a viable option for you?
yeah. So I got this 22 250 barrel on order. It's 26 inches. It's for an AR-10. So I can just build it into an AR that uh
Sorry, I'll go back to that question.
and the reason why I got 22 250 is in my research, the 62 grain bullet. My goal with it, the whole goal with this 22 250 build is to get a 62 grain M855 SS109 green tip penetrator round to go through level 4 armor. So
Hmm.
I'm gonna use the speed of the 22 250, and in that 62 grain, my research at the time, because 22 Creedmoor is new and there's not a lot of data out there for it. My like 22 250 beats it in velocity. It's all about velocity. So
Gotcha.
like 22 250 AI beats 22 250 in velocity, but not by as much as like 30-06 AI beats 30-06 Springfield. So
Gotcha. So
yeah.
Bacon, he's kind of got a little bit of a funny question, but I guess it could be kind of a serious question too. Do most properties in Alaska come with landing strips by default since you have to fly just about everywhere there? He's
No,
asking for a friend.
no, they don't. Good luck.
Parker Ackley.
Parker Ackley. Okay, cool. Yeah, educate
Um,
me some. So
it's a shoulder adjustment and more free bore for larger bullets, is what Ryan says.
yeah, that's what makes sense.
So, if you were going out deer hunting with the possibility of running across a bear, what would you take?
Um,
I know you're big into the 6.5 Ackley right now,
or well,
but
6.5 284 Norma.
all
I
right,
don't
yeah,
have any Ackleys. Yeah. Honestly, I would not take anything less. Like, so deer here, we have Sitka blacktail deer. They're pretty small. They average about 20 to 30 pounds less than the average southern whitetail. So in Kentucky, your whitetails are bigger than we had them in Georgia.
Yeah, we
It,
got some massive deer here.
and they like just their bodies on a good yearling doe is bigger than the bodies on that. So think of a good yearling spike or button that's well
Hmm.
developed, and that's your size of a blacktail Sitka blacktail deer. You get a 6 pointer, it's a trophy. Um, something that would be a kid's first deer in Kentucky would be a trophy here. That's why our premier species are caribou and stuff like that. I would not go out because most of the areas that those deer are in are big brown bear country. Um, and I would not go out without less than a 7 millimeter Remington Magnum. I don't think. Chuk and
Yeah.
I talked about going one time, and he says, "Don't bring your 6.5, man. The 6.5 is the perfect caliber for the deer, because they're smaller deer and whatever. 243 is perfect caliber for them. Um, but you run into one and you have a 243. Now what are you going to do? Run into a big
Hmm.
bear.
Piss of
So
deer.
or you run into a mean moose that wants to stomp the shit out of you because you're too close to its fawns or
Hmm.
calves rather. And honestly, that's more likely. Even in big brown bear areas, you're still more likely to get killed by a moose than a bear. So yeah, I would say nothing less than that. Now, if I were going to purposely hunt brown bear only, nothing less than a 338 Winchester Magnum.
See, you and I both have Winchester Magnums. I absolutely hate shooting mine. And then I've also got a Lapua Magnum. And I love the Lapua Magnum over the 338
Yeah, it's a
Win
bigger, heavy
Mag.
with a bigger muzzle brake on the end. You're not going to feel it
I
comparatively.
know. That's
Yeah,
it. I'm very recoil sensitive, my friend. Very recoil sensitive.
I didn't used to be, but now I'm getting that way. Like my 7 millimeter Magnum doesn't bother me because it's like a 10.5 pound gun with everything on it, and I've carried that gun 15 miles in that configuration before. So like people would say, "Oh, you need a light rifle to hunt with." No, you don't. Don't be a pansy. Um, but like that's about as much as I can take without my 338 Win Mag has a limb saver and a muzzle brake on it, and man, especially if you're shooting 250 grains, about 12 rounds and you're done,
Oh
and then
yeah.
you can't group with anything else that day because you're flinching so bad. So
So MC, I don't know if it's more of a statement or a question, but for Bear 12 gauge shotgun, number 7.5, double aught buck, plus slugs, first shot blind, second to try and change their mind. What do you think? Is that a viable
no,
motto?
slugs only. Anybody that puts birdshot or buckshot for a bear is absolutely freaking retarded. No offense to MC there. But I'm just going to call a spade a spade. You never know. Like, yeah, if it happens at short range, that that will probably work. All right. Don't get me wrong. But the problem is there are times the bear charges you from 50 yards. Now you have a shot spread that's not going to do anything to the bear.
Yeah.
Um, and then you have buckshot that you're going to have to get the snout on a bear. The bone that comes out on their bear is like 4 to 5 inches long. If you hit here, right in here, it's more slanted than our forehead, and so it's going to tend to roll up as it penetrates too. So you need a slug. Yeah, anybody, yeah, whoever told you that, MC, no offense to you, whoever told you that, MC, is absolutely freaking retarded. Don't listen to them. Okay, so I'm one of those guys. Sometimes I call a spade, so I apologize, MC, but that's the way I feel about it. Slugs
Gotcha.
only if you're using a shotgun, and waterproof your slugs, because the slugs are not naturally waterproof like a lot of crimped and sealed birdshot rounds are. And so you want to waterproof your slugs because I've been in situations where I've drowned some shotgun slugs and they went back to the range and they did not work. Fortunately, we didn't run into a bear. And this is why
Mhm.
I'd say carry a 45-70 over a 12 gauge any day of the week.
So when you're talking about waterproofing your slugs for people that don't understand, how do you do yours? I do mine with wax,
Yeah,
personally.
you can use candle wax. You can use fingernail polish. I actually use the actual primer sealant, and you
Hmm.
just put a little bit around the primer. You put a little bit around the open cup where the you can see the slug on top, uh,
Hmm.
and that's all I do. Some people even put it between the plastic casing and the copper base there, or brass
Yeah.
base there, and some people actually do that. So that's that. But yeah, definitely don't want to do that. Some MC says thanks for the real world knowledge. One of the biggest cases where this happened was where I hunt ducks. Somebody one time in a duck blind got charged in the 20-mile river basin. You can look up the article. They ended up firing, and they had with them were duck shells, 3-inch duck shells, and that's one reason why a lot of times I will buy the $80 nowadays box that's only 20 rounds or 15 rounds of the bismuth heavier than lead stuff, and that's the reason. Um, yeah, the look up the 20-mile. They fired 12 shots of like 3-inch duck shot, steel and copper, whatever, or whatever type of duck shot they have. So I that's the main reason, because you never know what the distance a bear is going to charge you from, and you never know if it's going to be a bluff charge at that distance. So
Hmm.
it's one of those things. 90% of charges are bluff charges, but they're
So
just
Bacon's
alone.
Bacon's got a good question here. What about using like a dragon breath or something like that?
Well, in the
I've
springtime
melted
here,
those in
very
chambers.
often
So
it's very often really dry in the springtime here. There's a good chance you'd start a forest fire you couldn't get out of if you were far enough back.
Mhm.
So no, absolutely not. Um, so
Alex Duke says he had a buddy that was in the Coast Guard that just moved back East Coast. While he was there, he sent me a link that a guy was getting harassed by a grizzly in a little cabin. The guy almost died.
I have I haven't heard that particular story. I had a guy who was on my channel a lot who told me about him getting harassed by a bear at a cabin, but he pulled out his 1911 with 230 grain flat nosed hardball plus P rounds. He loaded and put 8 of them in his head, and that grizzly bear didn't harass him no more. So that's yeah,
Yeah, we're
that's
getting on a tangent about bears and stuff like that, but that's all right. 67 Rebel SST AMC, I think he came from your side.
yep,
Um, says too much of a fire hazard up here for Dragon's Breath. Is he in Alaska
yeah,
also?
yeah. I've met him. He's a good guy. But yeah,
Gotcha.
he's a good guy, and he's right. Too much of a fire hazard up here. Like, I won't even shoot the stuff. I don't have a place to safely shoot the stuff, much less even in the wintertime. I mean, because a lot of those trees in the wintertime are just cold, and the evergreens have dry needles on them. If the wind blows all the snow off, then now you got a fire hazard in the winter. So,
Hmm.
like, I don't have a place to shoot them in the wintertime.
So that was going to kind of be my next question. Was when you is there like public gun ranges and stuff like that, or like public hunting land and things
Oh
of
yeah,
that nature?
yeah. There's all the above. Yeah, most of the land here to hunt on is public. Um, it's just state-owned land, or a lot of times it's native-owned land, and they let you hunt it, or they, you pay them to get on it. So like most of it's state-owned land or federally owned land, and it's like it's state-owned land across the street from my house, and then if I make a wrong turn, I'm in native tribal land, and that's where you got to be careful. Um, but like most of it's public land. Where I shoot my videos is public land, Bureau of Land Management type thing. Um, and yeah, that's about that. So there's plenty of gun ranges that the public can go pay and be at and that kind of thing. So
So what's the furthest range that's within, let's say, a hour drive of you? Like, what's the furthest distance?
There's 1,000 yard, about an hour and a half drive to 1,000 yard range, 300
Gotcha.
yards for that. If I really wanted to, I could go up the road from my house and set up 400 and 500 yard targets up the mountain on the power line. But it would be,
Okay.
yeah. So like it wouldn't be hard, but
Gotcha.
yeah, need a four wheeler, and I don't make that much money on YouTube yet for a four wheeler because they're expensive up here. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm having bullets for bucks. I was talking to him. He said he was in the process of moving right now, but him and I are supposed to do a live interview together, which you're you're tied up pretty tight with him too, aren't you?
Yeah, he's coming up here hunting in a few weeks. About
Gotcha.
6 weeks. So yeah.
Yeah, he was saying it'd be a little while. He's in the process of moving, which is pretty cool. Um, but so we're gonna start wrapping it up here. So we've got about 10 minutes now. So we got one last thing. I like to close out all my chats with this piece of a dad advice, brother advice, uncle advice, cousin advice, friendly advice, neighborly advice, whatever kind of advice to close
Hmm.
out the segment on.
Hmm. I haven't thought about this enough.
Don't
I guess
mean to
just
put you on the spot.
hug your children every day and love them, and don't let them grow up to be communists. So
There we go. All right, guys. Well, we're gonna head out of here. We appreciate Chuck for coming in. Chuck is linked in the description down below to his Instagram and his YouTube channel. All you that are not subscribed to Chuck, get over there and subscribe to Chuck. He does a lot of live reloading. I appreciate Chuck for coming on. I do appreciate it. So,
absolutely, thanks for having me.
um, but all right, guys. Well, we will catch you next time. And Chuck, I'll catch you in the backside. Bye, everybody.